So the city can grow north to some degree, but it's pretty landlocked pretty soon on most of the other borders there.
Yeah, and the growth, or I should say the Gorge Scenic Area is very, very restrictive about what you can build in it. And so as a result, it will maintain the appearance of the gorge being a scenic route. That was the intent behind the Scenic Gorge area and its own jurisdiction. It is possible to build there. I have some friends who have built out there, but it's very difficult to overcome the bureaucratic hoops and hurdles.
So it appears that Washougal is a bedroom community now, and it's going to remain a small city simply because there's really not much room for it to grow.
And many people like it that way.
Yeah,
oh, yes.
which is great.
Yeah, yeah. Many people come to Washougal because of the small town feel. I know that's one of the reasons why I came there. And when we first bought our house, we had a neighbor up the street not too far away from us that had a donkey, and you could hear the donkey braying in the morning. And you can hear bald eagles still in our neighborhood. There are several out there. And it's a very beautiful place to live, and I think many people come to Washougal because it has that small town feel.
Sure.
And it doesn't look like it's going to be an urban center in the future. But that does offer challenges because over the last decade, there have been many different policies set up by cities that were driven by growth. And you have to ask yourself the question, when it comes to cities, if you're not growing, can you sustain yourself? Because we receive impact fees. If somebody builds a house and it's several $1,000s for this impact fee, that impact fee, and whatnot, and if that is your source of income, which it was during the housing boom, you can start setting up spending habits based on that income, which were one-time income. And we're continuing to readjust from that right now and evaluating how much do we tax our citizens who stay here, who are here, rather than relying on growth.
And I expect that is it's good to know that you need to be able to live in a sustainable way, that if growth can be an engine to feed more government, more services, it's a nice character town. I think a lot of people move there and they just like that small town feel. It's good. How long have you been in the city?
Since 2002. Yeah, I moved from elsewhere in 2002, and we bought our house and absolutely love it. Have a lot of great neighbors, and it's a nice place to live, and I hope my children appreciate the fact that it's a beautiful city as they grow up there as well.
You have 2 children?
2, yes.
And their ages are?
6 and 8.
6 and 8. So you're full-time daddy. That's a great position to be in. How much time does a city council position take away from your family?
It can take as much as you want to give it if you really want to continue researching all the issues that come before the council to the nth degree. But we have council meetings 1 day a week, and I'm on 2 committees, well actually 3 committees, 1 that meets infrequently and 2 that will meet regularly on Mondays as well. So as a result, I generally dedicate my Mondays to city council work, and I also do my preparation for city council meetings when I can in between without impinging on the family time. So it is a balancing act. As with anything in life, you have to protect the time that you spend with your family. It's very seductive to be in a position of power, even though I know city council member is not that powerful a position. It's very seductive to be in any position of power and have people soliciting your opinions or soliciting your time, and to say, no, it's more important for me to play Legos with my kid on the floor rather than to go out to this function or something like that. But I think it's the calling of a father to be a father before many other things.
So it sounds like serving in your position is a sacrifice.
Well, it was only 1 day a week though, so it's not that big of a sacrifice in comparison to so many other jobs. And if you take a look at state legislatures, take for instance, that's a very much larger sacrifice. Or a congressperson, and running for Congress in 2008 was a good introduction to that whole arena. That's a different level. This is manageable, I should say, I hope, and it's something that doesn't impact my family to the same level as many of these other jobs would.
You still have a full-time job during the day?
Yes. I'm a pilot with Horizon Airlines.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-hmm. I fly the Dash 8-400, and it's a great job to be able to fly when or some days other than Monday. I can usually get Mondays off for the City Council. So it's been a very great job for us to have.
So I take it that you're not serving for in your position as a City Council member for the money. What does it pay?
Well, right now my current salary should be $500 a month, but we accepted a pay cut of $50 a month as a symbolic cost-cutting measure. So $450 a month is what I receive now, and with the new elections, that'll be codified. The Salary Commission, when they met last year, decided to decrease the pay for the City Council. And so existing council members don't have to take a pay cut, but new council members will. But many of us on the council chose to voluntarily take that pay cut. So it's $450 a month.
That's great. So you're leading by example.
Yeah.
I wonder how many other cities have voted to do the same thing.
Well, in many, I don't know if the cities actually have the option of changing their salary themselves. In our city, we have a salary commission that sets it, that's independent from the city, and we have no ability to change that ourselves. We can reduce it ourselves and say, please don't pay me this amount of money for whatever reason, and many politicians do that. But we actually can't change our salary. We can't vote it up or down. We have no authority to do that.
And that sounds like that system works well?
Well, it allows for independence for the Salary Commission. And you can understand that if you have authority over your own salary, it's tempting to say, well, of course, I work more than that. I deserve more money. It's very tempting to say that. And that brings me to one of my favorite sayings, which is power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I gotta say, the second half of that saying makes most people disregard the first half. Because how many of us have absolute power? Very, very few. And yet everybody has power in some sphere of their life. Power does corrupt. It just does. And when you recognize that, sometimes you can avoid those corrupting influences. But power will always corrupt. And giving an elected official the ability to change his own salary is just asking for him to be corrupt on some level.
So you really believe that absolute power corrupts absolutely?
Yes, but more importantly, power corrupts. So any amount of power will corrupt, and that's why it's absolutely important for the citizens to pay attention to what their representatives do. Even though I know this, and I'm working towards not being corrupt myself in City Council and not having any corrupting influences, I do appreciate the fact that citizens come and they correct me, they correct other council members, and I hear from them some of that the moral compass which you may not have paid attention to for a couple of weeks or may not have even known about in some area. And it's always important to hear that citizen input. So if there was ever a message I could give directly to the voters, it's make sure you show up at City Council and all the other jurisdictions and give them your impression about what government should be doing.
So you welcome citizen feedback. It makes you a better person.
Absolutely. Even if I don't agree with the input, you certainly understand where the other person's coming from, and it gives you more respect for dealing with the issue. If you are, ask yourself this question: if you're ever going to rezone somebody's house, do they want it or do they not want it? It would be nice to hear from them. And many times you'll hear only from opposition. In some cases, you won't hear in support of an issue or won't hear as much. And that's why it's necessary to go out and seek that amongst my neighbors as well.
So a little bit of power can corrupt a little bit. And the more you get, the more the temptation is there.
Right. And also the transparency in government is a good check against that. When you know that your meetings are being recorded, when you know that people can ask for your records here or records there, you know that you're always under threat of citizen investigation, if you will, and you need to make sure that, of course we need to do it anyway, but you always need to make sure that you're doing things on the up and up and in the best way possible. They're always looking over your shoulder, in other words.
which I would think, if there's a natural tendency for corruption, to just that human factor, that selfishness, that self-promotion that can take over, I would think that you're wise to be aware of that and to invite oversight, to accept accountability, to promote transparency.
I hopefully we can have that at all levels of government. It gets more and more difficult the more money is involved. And also, the more you rely on human factors such as trust, the more difficult it is to be accountable. As much as I trust and respect many people that I work with in city government, the reality is that you have to have a system in place to keep the honest man honest. You may trust your mayor completely, but if he tells you this project is going to cost X and then later comes back and says, well, we're going to need more money, on some level, you have that discussion, well, should we have known about that at first so that we wouldn't have been paying X, but we would have a plan for Y? Or is this legitimately a cost overrun that we don't know about? So there is a certain amount of trust out there that we make the assumption that these first estimates are correct. And yet, if every place we can, if we can have some sort of system in place or some way of keeping the honest man honest, having independent analysis, having the independent or whoever's making the independent analysis be independent instead of being too closely wed with the city, that type of thing. It's a good policy to have. So
the character of the person who's going to want to run for public office sounds like it's a very crucial foundation. If they don't have trust, if they can't be trusted, then they certainly can't be trusted with giving them extra power, give them access to money, give them access to influences that can advance their own benefit.
Right, and that I think so many voters understand that that it's just part of our culture that we look for the most trustworthy politician when we're looking at candidates to vote for. But one thing that I would urge caution in that regard is if we're only relying on men, and we all have human nature, which is a fallen nature, we're relying on an inherently faulty system. And that's one of the reasons.
By men, you mean men and women, mankind.
Yes, okay. Exactly. But that was one of the reasons why the Founding Fathers built the Constitution the way they did, because it says Congress shall not. It's not, well, if you're good men, you won't do this. It says you have no authority to do this. And that's one of the reasons why the Constitution is such a special document and has kept our country free for so long, is because it does restrict the power of government. As you get lower in jurisdiction, you have fewer and fewer checks like that. One thing that is important to know about the 10th Amendment, say, is that the 10th Amendment reserves all the powers not delegated to the federal government to the states and the people respectively. So all power is vested in the states and the people. The state has the power on some level to oppress its people. Oppress being high taxation, onerous regulation. The state has a legitimate power under the 10th Amendment to do that. The idea behind it is that you have states which compete against each other. Well, we don't have that many regulations over here, and see how nice it is. We have less taxation over here, see what good prosperity we have amongst our businesses. So the idea is that you have competition between the states. But at the lower jurisdiction, you don't have as many laws that you can control on the local level, which will restrict the power of government. Mainly, people look to city government to supply water and sewer services and fire and police services, and most people don't look to the restrictions of government itself. So it gets kind of tricky in the lower level, and that's where character does make a huge difference. As a system, it would be much better just to rely on those restrictions government cannot. And that way, whether he's a good politician or a bad politician, he's restricted from ever doing this.
Bind them down with chains.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that phrase. And if we bind men down with the chains of the Constitution, then we will just systemically be more free.